Never occurred. Oh, it looks like we're like. Anyway, hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate. On one of the platforms, we've not quite been able to go live, but we are on another. So hopefully something's working. I might try clicking go live and seeing if that does the trick.
We're live
Um,
somewhere, Gav. Don't worry
we're
about
live
it. It'll be
somewhere.
fine. Everybody's live somewhere.
I mean, I feel alive, so uh, and it looks like we're live on YouTube, but not on Twitter. So uh, whatever. Ollie, we'll come on to obviously Saturday and the Championship player final. I know, getting nervous. Um, just before we do, kind of reflecting on the season as a whole, obviously we've got to say a massive congratulations to Leeds United and Burnley for
Huge.
reaching 100 points, because I think that's a huge achievement at this level, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ridiculous, let's be honest, all the way through the season I said that, United are going to be right up there, we're going to be chasing Leeds and Burnley, it's going to be close all the way, but when push came to shove, they just came up clutch at the end, how many games in a row did they win? At least 5 in a row, I think, to finish the season, to get themselves to 100 points. It's two of the best teams that are going to have played at this level. The records that Burnley have broken are, quite frankly, ridiculous. They conceded 16 goals. Like, we need to just take a moment at the end of the season to go, they only conceded 16 goals. And I think I'm right in saying they never conceded more than 1 goal in a game.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous levels. So yeah, two unbelievable teams, two teams who were rightly automatically promoted and who ultimately were just by far the best two teams in the league.
I'm kind of torn on the conversation as to which of them's likeliest to do better in the Premier League, because there's going to be people who say that Burnley, with their rigidity and how solid they are, that's going to be an incredibly valuable quality for them going up a level. On the other hand, I also think Leeds have possibly a slightly better rounded side,
Yeah.
and they've got more in terms of creating chances that
Yeah.
could help them as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting debate because I always wonder about what do you want to see from a team in the Premier League that's trying to stay up? Because obviously in the last few years we've tried a lot of different ways and ultimately they've all failed. Nobody has been able to get it right. When I look at these two teams, my risk for Burnley is what does that defensive unit look like on the first day of the season? Is James
Yeah.
Trafford going to go to Newcastle? I think CJ Egan Riley's contract might be running out, and so there might
Yeah,
be
I
options
think he
there.
was going to go to Strasbourg, wasn't he?
To Strasbourg, yeah, because obviously as the Chelsea sister club, I think the long-term plan is obviously for him to end up there. And so all of a sudden, that defensive rigidity we've just talked about, how much of that is left? How much are they losing through losing some of those key players? Whereas Leeds are the one hope, I think, of the EFL. I think when we're looking at the Premier League, I think we're not very far away from them proposing rule changes, from them looking at things like one up, one down, going to an 18-team league. I think they're starting to hear the noise. We're hearing it in journalists already starting to say, this is unsustainable. So I think it's really important we start to think about, we need teams to go up and stay up. I think Leeds have got a great chance. I think they've got the right physical profile, but I think as well, if you cannot concede, you can draw 0-0. But teams in the Premier League don't give you goals very often. You're not just going to be able to walk through them with the ease that Burnley have done this season. So what you need is a really strong attacking unit that can overwhelm teams. And I think there's every chance that Leeds win games 2-1, that Leeds win games 3-2. Whereas the only results I can see for Burnley is a 1-0 win. They'll win
Yeah.
1-0 or they'll lose or draw. Whereas Leeds have got numerous different ways to hurt you, a different way of playing. I don't think they'll do it, but I think they'll get a lot closer than anybody else has in the last few years. So I think Leeds are the ones that I'm putting my hat on and saying, good luck, lads, we need you to do this.
I think there's actually a chance both stay up.
Who are they catching, is my question. Who are they catching?
Yeah, it's good. That's where I'm kind of tested for my Premier League knowledge. I feel like I'd make myself look like a bit of a gammon
Yeah.
if I tried to. I've not done an awful lot of research on the Premier League, so I don't know.
Yeah. The big one for me, obviously, and I think what does give us hope for those two clubs in particular is, and nobody knows what's happening, but what could happen to Manchester City, for example, if, as is being rumoured, they're going to get a 70, 60 point deduction. All you've got to do is get to sort of 25, and it's a long way back for them to try and be catching towards you. So I think that gives us an opportunity. I do think that there's other teams in the league that might be vulnerable. There are teams who are going into Europe for the first time that, haven't got used to that experience. So Notts Forest, for example, there are rumours that Nuno is going to get offered the Roma
You're going
job
to
and
really
might
annoy
move
them
on.
by calling them Notts Forest.
Aye. Beastly Ollie, Sheffield United way. So Notts Forest are potentially going to be a team that you need to keep an eye on. First season in European competition, they've had an unbelievable year this year. With all seriousness, I joke a little bit, but for Nottingham Forest, it's been an unbelievable season the way that they've taken that forward. Their achievement cannot be overstated. However, if the manager leaves and then you have to deal with the addition of European football, that's a lot of stress on a team that's being pushed to its limit anyway. There's rumours that Gibbs White and some of their other key players might get pinched by teams like Manchester City. There's also the fact that Chris Wood is not going to score 15 goals a season regularly in the Premier League. That's just not going to happen over sort of sustained amount of time. So they could maybe be shot at. Wolves are losing Mateus Cunha. He's won them the majority of their points. Maybe they can be shot at. So it feels like there's opportunities, but you have to be very, very good, I think, to try and be competitive. And of course, there's Man U and Spurs who are just rubbish. So maybe you'll just finish above them.
Yeah, absolutely. Circling back to the important league, which is the Championship.
Obviously, the ones that actually matter, the Championship and the EFL.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've got to reflect on some really good managerial performances this season, especially from John Eustace. I mean, he's done absolute wonders for his stock this season, hasn't he? Putting Blackburn in playoff contention and keeping up Derby from a difficult position.
I can't believe the 3 jobs that John Eustace has done. Like, just going back sort of 2 years. Obviously, he had Birmingham, I think, 6th at the point that he moved on. He's then gone to Blackburn, a team who I had in all kinds of relegation trouble. I thought they were going down this season. I think if we went back to our pre-season predictions, they would be in my bottom 3. They might have even potentially been bottom. And to get them competing for the playoffs at the point he left, he built them into a squad, a unit, a team that were ready to just kick on and really try and push forwards. I thought that was outstanding. And then to go into Derby and do the same thing. Their form towards the end of the season was solid from the point he'd come in. They weren't anywhere near a relegation team from the point that John Eustace manages his first game. And I don't think you can say enough about him. I think if he'd had one team, one job, he'd have been a huge contender for manager of the season. It's just because he jumped from one to the other that maybe he was a bit overlooked when it came to those kind of awards.
It's been an odd Championship, hasn't it, Ollie, in the sense that in parts of it, the standard has been insanely strong. Like, I don't even think in second tier history we've had 2 teams getting to 100 points, because it changed it at some point. I think it might be 1982. They changed it from 2 points for a win to 3 points. Not quite sure I've got the right date, but I don't know. But it's that kind of thing.
Nobody else knows enough to correct you, Gab. So we'll go
I'll just have the confidence. It was definitely 1982.
100%.
100%, absolutely. Got it right in my noggin. So I think Leeds and Burnley were insanely strong, but then I think there's other parts of the Championship where you're looking at a few teams that kind of let you down a little bit, in the sense that Norwich you tend to think of as being a team that should be competing towards the top, and they look like they would be, but then they had a massive drop-off in the second half of the season. Middlesbrough have been far too streaky. West Brom, massive drop-off after Carlos Corberán left. It felt, for those 3 in particular, I would probably pinpoint, we're probably looking for a bit more from them next season.
Oh, I mean, don't want to go in too harshly, but I think ultimately it's unacceptable levels of performance from some of those teams. I think Middlesbrough in particular should be really, really disappointed with their performance levels this season. We started this season saying they are the best of the rest. We looked at the parachute teams, and then we said Middlesbrough should be the team that are ready to go again, that are going to be in the playoffs, and as a minimum expectation, they'll be 6th. Like, there was no way they'd finish below that. They then started the season, and their performance level was up there. They started the season with really strong performances. They were playing well. They weren't always getting results, but they were playing really well. And as the season went on, they just regressed and regressed and regressed. And by the end of the season, I was kind of saying, I'd bring them on. I'd love to play them. Like, they're rubbish. Because they just seem to have completely lost everything that made them special. And I know they had a really difficult January. Obviously, they sold Latilath, who's a huge loss. Ben Doak picked up that big injury, which basically wiped him out for the season. And they're 2 big players to lose, but they should have found a way to adapt around that. Tommy Conway had a fantastic season. He's not that big a drop-off from where Latilath was. And so they really should have expected a lot more from their season. And if I'm being brutally honest, I'm very shocked that Michael Carrick has still got a job there as we talk today, because I thought he'd have been moved on well before now. For West Brom, it was overperformance for me under Corporán. I never saw them as a playoff team this season. I think I said it to
Really?
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
well,
think I said it to
you
you repeatedly through
I,
sort of like the first 6 months of the season.
maybe I just never listened to you.
Yeah, understandable. I don't think anybody ever should. I'm getting pelters these last couple of days. Go watch Sportsman Untitled. Honestly, I can't get a word in. But yeah, we did obviously talked a lot about West Brom, and I always felt Corberán was their reason. If they were going to get top six, it was built on the back of Corberán being a fantastic manager, probably a manager who's too good for the Championship. And we've seen since he's gone to Valencia, took them from relegation trouble to European contention. So we're talking about a very, very high-level manager that was sort of getting the most out of them. But it was disappointing how they dropped off, because it's a low bar. So when they were already in the position they were in, it didn't take that much for them to just go from where Corberán left them to get into the playoffs. They probably only needed sort of 20 points after he'd left.
Yeah.
So it's really not that much that they needed to get out of the sort of squad for the second half of the season. And yeah, really disappointing. Norwich, disappointing season, but I'm shocked about the sacking of Hoftorp, to be honest. It really caught me off guard, because he's one of those managers, I think we knew this was going to be a transition season.
Yeah.
I think they announced at the start of the year, they said, we're going to do a transition this season. We're going to give the keys to the castle to Johannes Hoftorp. We're going to let him build a squad in his image, and then we're going to see how that takes us forward. But this is our long-term plan. So they knew it was going to be transition. And yes, it was worse than expected. And yes, the second half of the season, it imploded a little bit. But I didn't think it was bad enough that he should have got the sack. I think it was underperformance. They should expect better, but a little bit harsh to take him out of the role.
Yeah, I initially had that reaction, but then I saw Ben Napper's interview, and I could kind of get it, because I think he was possibly thinking, if they'd missed out on the top six, but having been close and having sort of progressed over the course of the season and feeling like the team's getting better and lots of players are really developing, then maybe that they would have kind of stuck with him. But the drop off had been, like, in terms of form, they'd tailed off so much that they felt like they needed to make a change. I don't know whether I would have done it, but I can kind of understand why they did. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the relegation battle, it was Preston North End have had a weird season, 20 draws. I mean, it's going to be very fascinating to see what Paul Heckingbottom can do with them in the summer. It looks like that's going to be a big rebuild for them, and they've got to get it right.
Yeah, they've got a huge amount of work to do. And the question that I ask really is, and I suppose it's a question to their ownership group, what is your ambition? What's the aim for Preston North End? Because for years now, they have sat in that sort of 12th, 13th position, but they've always been punching above their weight. Budget-wise, they're always towards the bottom end of the Championship. They're always trying to overperform just to keep themselves in the upper echelons, moving towards the playoffs. And so it's probably not a huge shock to see them drop. I didn't expect them to drop the way they have done, or to the level that they have done, but this summer, with the rebuild they need to do, with the number of players that they're likely going to have to bring in, I think there's a real question about budget and what the owner is going to do to stop them being in this position again. I think what really clouded their season, though, is how they ended it, because their end to the season was arguably, I think they were in the worst form in the division by the time we got towards sort of the end of the season, because they just lost week after week after week, and they went from safe in sort of March to almost relegated. And I think if the season lasts another 2 weeks, they probably do get relegated because of how bad their form was and how much they were struggling towards the end. So yeah, a really big summer, a lot of work to do. But again, I really rate Heckingbottom. He rebuilt United's culture. He rebuilt a squad that had been really struggling. I think he can do it again, but he does need a quick start, because I'm sure they won't be too patient if it continues the way this season's ended.
Yeah, for sure. A big drop off towards the end of this season. I think there's a couple of clubs in Stoke and Hull where you would say you would ask some big structural question marks. I think Hull at the moment are showing signs of sort of following what in Watford's shoes, and maybe Watford you'd add to this category, because Aja Nilagela sacked Liam Rosenior last summer, brought in Tim Volter, proved to be completely the wrong fit. Ruben Sellers kept Hull City up
Did his
from
job.
a difficult position, which was what was asked of him. I don't know. I think the right decision would have been to stick with Ruben Sellers because I think he's a really talented coach, and they need some stability. But now they're going for another change of manager, and now I'm starting to question the whole operation really at Hull.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You know, we're talking about a club who had struggled for so long under their previous ownership, and it was really on a sort of run of excitement that they got the new ownership coming in. I think the first season they made some interesting decisions, but everyone kind of said, you know, we can see the investments there, we can see what they're trying to do, give them a little bit of a pass. Then they got it right. They got it absolutely perfectly right with Liam Rosenior, a fantastic manager. I think he was Championship Manager of the Season last year, and he got them right on the edge of the playoffs. I know there'd been a lot of sort of funding. I know they'd brought players like Fabio Carvalho in, which is quite ridiculous in the Championship, but they'd got themselves to a point where, you know, we just talked about teams who might think it's been a really low bar to get into the playoffs. It's been the lowest bar historically, I think, ever to get into the
Yeah.
playoffs. Well, one of the teams who really should be kicking themselves and thinking, why didn't we just do a sensible par job? Because we could have had that. Hull have got to be one of those teams because you keep Rosenior over the summer. You let him build for this season. They could very, very easily have found themselves in the playoffs this year. But instead, they chose to blow it up. They chose to try something different. They went for Tim Volter and his sort of patience and his, well, whatever time of football he was trying to play. I don't think he ever quite got it right. And I know, obviously, particularly their home record has been just atrocious. I would have given Sellers more time. I really rate him. Obviously, the job he's done at Reading cannot be understated. The turmoil, the explosions, everything that was going on at that club, for him to get them towards the playoffs, to have them stabilised in League One, to have overcome all of that sort of ownership difficulty to a point where they've now got the takeover. So much of that you have to give huge credit to Sellers for. So him losing his job at Hull, I think, is just another bad decision and another sort of ridiculous overreaction from the owner, depending on what happens next and where they go next. Because obviously they've been quite ambitious. I know they were talking to Will Still. It looks unlikely he's going to go there. But yeah, maybe he's about to do another masterstroke and find the next Liam Rosenior. But Hull, for me, well, no, there's one team, I think, who we'll come to later, who had a bigger underperformance. But Hull are the second team for me in terms of the implosion and the mess that was created by their owners that have pushed them right down. And they're lucky to still be in the Championship.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think we talk about ownership chaos. I'm really uncertain about the situation at Sheffield Wednesday, even off the back of a top half finish, because it looks like initially when some of the Wednesday outs were blaming Danny Röhl for the way he'd conducted himself around looking for other jobs, I'd felt like there was a degree of displacement, possibly at frustration at not being able to, well, you can't, sometimes it feels like you can't always direct a chance here. You want to direct it as somebody who's more public facing because you don't always feel heard. And I wonder if there's a degree of that. But actually, increasingly, it feels like Danny Röhl might not have handled his interest in other jobs as well as when Sarach would have liked. And it does make me wonder. I don't know if I think he's possibly burnt a lot of his bridges at Sheffield Wednesday. So now it's like he kind of needs a move to go for him this summer because I don't think it's going to necessarily work so well for him in terms of next season at Hillsborough.
No, it's such a bizarre one because, you know, I think one of the things that's really hurt Danny Röhl is because obviously today it sounds like Leipzig have said that they don't want him. Obviously Southampton have looked elsewhere. It looks as though Leicester are going to look elsewhere and they're looking at a different way of trying to get their way out of it. So suddenly those clubs who he almost looked nailed on for the opportunity for do look to have gone away, which suddenly staying at Wednesday looks like it might maybe be his best option. But I think the difficulty there is it became clear so early on in the season that he was hoping to leave. You know, after January, and I understand his managerial frustration that Chansiri hadn't signed in the players he wanted, that they'd not spent the money to really have a go at the playoffs. But, you know, this is progress. This was a big step forward from where they were last season. They weren't in relegation trouble. They were doing well and ticking over. And you'd probably say as a manager, this is part of the natural progression of the plan. Relegation trouble, you stay up. You stabilise in mid-table. Next season, you look towards the playoffs and maybe higher. That's where that development starts to come together. And so, for him to have been quite so vocal in being obviously wanting another job, while Wednesday's form just fell off a cliff and they ended the season just really awfully, from sort of the Sheffield derby in March to the end of the season, they might have only won once. I think they've only won 3-4 times at Hillsborough all season.
Yeah.
It really just... If I was a fan, I'd be quite annoyed at the way that he'd conducted himself. He's a fantastic manager. He's going to go very far in the game, but the way he's conducted himself has made it really difficult. Obviously, there's also a situation that seems to have risen with their star player in Josh Windass, where his dad, Dean Windass, before the final game of the season at Hillsborough, had put out a tweet basically saying Josh is going to play at Hillsborough for the final time. He's leaving Sheffield Wednesday, and almost seemed to be announcing it. Only for a week later, Wednesday, to announce they've triggered a contract extension, so he's staying for another 12 months. And Josh Windass to start tweeting pictures of like hostages and saying that he'd been sort of held against his will almost. So it just feels like a really messy situation for the manager, for the key players. Obviously, Chansiri brings this, and they need a change of ownership. It sounds as though there could be a positive summer, because I know in Sheffield in particular, there seems to be noise every week about Americans and about Simon Jordan's trying to sell him on TalkSport and all that kind of stuff. So maybe there will be one big step forward, but certainly it just feels like a mess, doesn't it? And it wouldn't be too shocking if they continued their downward trajectory into next season if they can't get everything right off the pitch.
Yeah, and again, I think it sounds odd to say in May, but actually you want the takeover to be happening in March so that you get the wheels in motion for May, June, July, as opposed to having the takeover in May and then it doesn't really impact the summer an awful lot.
That's exactly what we said about United last summer, isn't it? You know, we were in the same position where we got to this stage of the season. Everyone said, "Oh, by the way, you're going to get a takeover. Americans are coming in. Brilliant! Can't wait. Yeah, we're going to have a really big summer." The Americans arrived in November, so you've got to try and get the timing of it right so that it really does benefit the club and give you those sort of positive ways forward.
Absolutely. In terms of saying goodbye for now to the current bottom three, Cardiff City, well, the current bottom three, it's the finishing bottom three.
They probably are the current bottom three, but they're going to be the bottom three for a while yet.
Until the fixture release day. So Cardiff City, Plymouth Argyle and Luton Town. I'm intrigued about Luton in terms of League One because they found the last quarter of the season their form has actually picked up a lot and they've just missed out. Quite unlucky to go down with 49 points. So do you feel like Matt Bloomfield's got something there that he could build with?
Yeah, I mean, look, they've still got the basis of the squad that won promotion to the Premier League, that was the best of the three teams that got relegated from the Premier League. That spine of that club is still perfectly set up and built. Yes, it's gone wrong this season. They've had bad luck with injuries. Obviously, the form of Adebayo and Morris has basically crippled them from the start of the season because they just couldn't score any goals. And so you can see where those difficulties have come. But they've got both the basis of a squad that is just way too good for League One. They've got sellable assets in players like Tello Asgard, in players like Carlton Morris, who will generate funds for further investment. They've also still got parachute money, so they're going to be a parachute payment team playing in League One. And while a lot of that investment is going to be given to the ground and making sure that they've got everything set up for their long-term sustainable future, which is sensible ownership and is the right thing to do, you've got to think their budget for League One, it won't be Birmingham level, but you'd expect it to be a top-level League One, probably the highest in the division next season. Yeah. And I'd expect Matt Bloomfield as well, having shown that he's started to turn it around, having got a little bit of positive momentum behind him, I think they'll be fine in League One next season. They're the team that I'm least worried about in terms of their long-term prospects, because they'll be back in the Championship before too long, I'm certain of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cardiff City, it felt like, I think Entity 20 refer to these as kind of gravity relegations, although I suppose Cardiff haven't actually been in the bottom three a lot over the last 5 years, but they have been that hovering club other than last season when they were sort of in the top half under Errol Bullitt. But other than that, they've been 19th a lot, haven't they? 18th, 19th, that sort of between just above the relegation zone and lower mid-table. But they've had a lot of issues in terms of the operational side and the running of the club, and a lot of those problems have kind of come home to roost this season.
just got everything wrong, didn't they, really? And I feel for him a little bit, because I was excited for Cardiff. Again, another one where my pre-season predictions couldn't be more wrong about sort of an incumbent championship team. I had them, I think, pushing towards the top half. I might have had them 11th, something like that, pre-season. Because I liked the business they'd done. It felt like they'd brought in some really talented attacking players. You know, they'd got players like Ruben Colwill as well, who were going to continue their development and sort of continue to shine at championship level. So yeah, I was excited for their season. So to see it implode the way it has done wasn't on my bingo card. As much as it is a gravity relegation, as much as it is they've sort of found themselves in that kind of presence, I thought they took themselves above it. I thought last season was a really positive start and they were going to kick on from there. But it just all went wrong from the first day, didn't it? Like, Bullock came in and just had an awful start to this season. They were just in a real mess, couldn't get out of it. Ritza came in, and I think this is another question to the owners of, there was a moment when Omar Ritza was riding a wave. I think they won his first 3 games, did they? Maybe it was 3 of his first 4, something like that.
Yeah.
And they had a really good run of form, which had propelled them up the division a little bit. They were starting to settle around mid-table. That's when you're given the job. But the Cardiff fans, no. The owners weren't going to do that. They decided, let's wait a little bit longer. And they dropped off. Their form went back down to sort of what it had been before Ritza had come in, while they'd still got Bullock. They were moving back towards relegation. And they found that point to be the time that they wanted to offer him his long-term contract, make him the permanent manager. And that just felt bizarre to me. And so I think there was so much off-field uncertainty, it did affect their performances. Ritza never got it back. From the moment that, that form had started to turn, he never looked like turning it around. Was some of the most bizarre motivational Twitter messages that I've ever seen, with his hashtag Cardiff has won, hashtag managerial genius, hashtag Omar Ritza is an expert. It was bizarre to follow. So yeah, an interesting season from them. I feel for them, but I also worry about them because I don't quite know how they're going to get themselves back to that level of stability they need for promotion. You'd expect them to be a top 6 team in League One, but I'm less certain that they're secure. And I could very easily see them doing similar to Huddersfield, where it doesn't quite click, they don't quite get it right, and they end up having a big budget, but not much to show for it on the field.
Yeah, and then Plymouth Argyle are another curious one, because when they came up, there was so much faith in all the key people in leadership positions, in Simon Hallett, in Andrew Parkinson, even to an extent Neil Dewsnip at the time, and of course Stephen Schumacher. And all of that faith, for different reasons, has been eroded. And obviously Schumacher left for Stoke a few months into the first season up. Dewsnip's now gone. I think they've appointed a couple of key people off the field as well. So a different sort of, a bit of a rethink in the recruitment strategy. I feel conflicted on this because I definitely think mistakes have been made over the last 2 years. I do trust Simon Hallett, that he's got the right intentions for the club. I think he speaks very well. I think he's the kind of person that you want representing your football club. And I hope that the majority of the Green Army kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, I think going down, it is going to take a bit of a rethink, and they're going to have to get it right.
Yeah, agreed. It was almost against the odds promotion that they got, wasn't it? I know they've been a sort of top-end League One team, but the way they did it that season, over 100 points, beating Ipswich, beating Wednesday, getting themselves into the Championship, was a real sort of success story for a really well-run club. But it's felt like they've sort of had the magnet put behind them to sort of drag them back down over the last couple of seasons. It was a brilliant start under Schumacher. They got themselves enough points that by the end of last season, as much as the magnet had dragged them closer and closer to relegation, they managed to stay up. And that's when they needed a moment. They needed Simon Hallett to make the right decision. And unfortunately, he took a gamble on... Well, all I can assume is that this was a gamble made only considering commercial interests and not thinking about the long-term footballing side of the stability that Plymouth needed. Because bringing in Wayne Rooney, everybody knew. The moment he was appointed, everybody knew this was a disaster. Everybody knew that the only thing that Wayne Rooney would bring to Plymouth was a relegation. And here we are talking about it. If Miran Muslic had been manager for the full season, they wouldn't go down. He averaged 1.2 points a game. He'd have probably got them to mid-50s, 60s, I think, if you look at that over a 46-game season. His performances, they beat Liverpool. He was able to build this team into one who were difficult to beat, who were winning games of football. I saw that belief myself when we played them and they kind of sort of saw us off at home, and you sort of thought, This is a team
Didn't
that should
see
be
Chris
fighting for
Wilder
it.
off, though.
Should be
Well,
Well, I'll tell you what has seen Chris Wilder off, the size of the fine that we've got as a result of that. I mean, it's an absolute shocker. It's just been come through today. I think it takes us to about £500,000 for the season. It's bizarre. We just like scrapping. But yeah, it all comes back to that one decision. I
best
think
180 grand Wells ever paid.
it was worth it to show them lads something else. Just bizarre football. But yeah, good side Plymouth. I think they'll be okay. But for me, the budget is what concerns me more than anything else. I think they proved themselves good enough to stay in the division. And I think under Muslich, if he just had a few more months, a few more games, they might have been able to get themselves above that line, probably in place of Hull, who I think probably, on the balance of it, deserved a relegation more than Plymouth did. But yeah, I don't want to disparage the man too much, but employ Wayne Rooney, and you know what you're going to get ultimately at championship level at this stage.
Yeah, I think lots of mistakes made by Plymouth Argyle last couple of years, so a lot to learn for them.
Just to say on Plymouth, my last point is that I really like their model. I really like the way that they're sort of building the club, the way that they've gone for sort of younger signings to try and develop players. But what worries me a little bit for their long-term sort of development and whether or not they can ever sustain themselves as a sort of fully functioning championship team. We signed Michael Cooper for £2 million. They've got some unbelievable talents in that club, in that squad. But for a club that's run on a low budget, they're not able to demand the big fees that maybe some of the other clubs can. Where if we don't get promoted and Michael Cooper has to move on, we'll get £20 million. And it's very much comes down to that sort of pulling power and us being able to say, well, no, why would we sell for cheap? And that does seem to have hurt Plymouth a little bit in that they didn't have the bargaining power to maximise some of the best assets that they've got. So what I'm really hoping is that on relegation, if they are going to lose players, which they may do, I really hope that they try and maximise that bargaining power as much as possible to get the money they deserve. Because that's the thing, they're doing everything right, but at the end, they're maybe not getting the full financial reward. So hopefully that's something that changes a little bit for them in the next sort of 12, 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Right then, Ollie, championship player final. Do you want to take a breath?
I need to breathe. It's warm in here.
Yeah, it's I think what we can say from Sheffield United's point of view, first of all, Ollie, is that whatever happens, and it's difficult to detach yourself from the outcome because promotion has always been the aim, but there's been some great work that's been done to go from however few points you got last season to accumulating 92 over a full season. That shows remarkable progress.
Yeah, we got 16 points last season. So we only got like 80 more points this season.
6 times more points than
something
roughly.
Like that. Yeah. It's not a bad effort, is it, in terms of the progress that you make season on season? Yeah, it's been a massive season of rebuild. At the start of the season, I didn't have us anywhere near the top two. I said 6th, and I think I even said 6th just to try and not look too negative because I'd get slated by my own fans. Like, ultimately, I probably would have had us a little bit lower. Maybe talking 8th, 9th, because I thought we needed a full season of rebuild. I didn't think the squad was good enough. I didn't think the players were good enough. I thought that those who maybe did have the talent didn't have the attitude, and they just weren't here for anything other than a paycheck. And so there was a lot of resentment towards the squad, the players, but also just a feeling of trauma and having been bruised by everything that had happened last season. It was embarrassing. If we're being fully honest, it was really embarrassing. And so this season was about reconnecting with the squad, reconnecting with the players, reconnecting with the manager, and being a team that we could be proud of again. And that's the thing that we've achieved more than anything else. Win, lose or draw, whatever happens on Saturday, this has been a Sheffield United team that I can be proud of, that I can celebrate with, that I can cheer about, that I can turn to my friends and go, I love these lads, because they've done everything they can do this season to get us as close as they can. 92 points. I think we've now set the record in the EFL for most points without a promotion. And before anybody comes at me, Sheffield Wednesday did get promoted from League One when they got 96 points. Yes, they won the playoffs, but they did get promoted. So, depending on what happens on Saturday, we'll either be the team who's won the most points to not get promoted, or we'll still be the team, obviously, in the Championship who's won the most points to not get automatic promotion. So, it's been an incredible season. It's been much better than I expected. There's one game left.
There is something that feels a little bit unjust in accumulating 92 points and not getting automatic promotion, because I imagine 9 seasons out of 10 you would easily get
every other
every
season
other
ever
season.
in the
Yeah,
Championship history, 92 points gets you promoted.
yeah. And in this season you're 10 points off, which is
Yeah,
just
and we're
like,
miles away. That's the
I
thing.
know.
We've got 92. We're not even close.
Right, so where was I? So yeah, I mean, do you what would be your, if you had to put a percentage on it, how likely do you think it is that Sheffield United will be lifting the promotion trophy at Wembley?
Oh, what a nasty question.
I know, it's
What
awful,
a
isn't it?
nasty question, Gab.
I'm a horrible man.
Well, I've always said that. It's a really interesting one because obviously there's so many factors that you have to consider going into it. There is the fact that I've just talked about United being the best team to ever play in the Championship playoffs. So in terms of points won over a season, in terms of the win in the semi-final, we broke the record by beating Bristol City 6-0. Everything points to United being the best team and the team most ready, most prepared, and who deserve it most over the season to get promoted. But that ain't how football works. Sunderland are a great team on their own merit.
Yeah.
They finally got some of the players they've been missing all season back fit, with Mundell, with Watson, and that gives them a completely different shape. They're not going to be the team who have to go everything through the centre. Enzo Lefay's not going to be parked out on the left wing doing nothing. Enzo Lefay's going to be in the middle. Mundell or Watson's going to be out on the left. That can hurt anybody in this division. That makes them as good as any team in this division. And actually, until those injuries hit, they were right on the line with United, with Leeds, with Burnley. So there's so many factors to consider. If I was putting a percentage on it, United are favourites. United are rightly the favourites. I would say if we played this game 100 times, United would win it 60 times and Sunderland would win it 40. So I give us a slight edge, but not enough that I'm willing to bet my house on it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm slightly stumped because we actually answered a lot of the obvious questions, didn't we, yesterday on the Sportsman Untitled? So I'm a little bit, yeah. Is this just the nerves? I guess you must just feel so apprehensive about.
It's the curse, Gab. That's
Yeah.
the big thing for me now. It's the thing that, because I've been really trying hard. Every podcast I do, every show that we've talked about it, even just at home with my mum and dad. I live with my wife, but I mean when I go home and see my mum and dad, just to, before anyone starts tweeting about me being in the basement. But when I go home and see my mum and dad, we talk about it, and like my first thought is always, I think we'll win. I think it's different this time. You know, the scenes that we've had, the fact that we've tributed this season to George Baldock and we've made it in his memory, and we've really had some fantastic time celebrating, and it's felt emotional and moving, and it's been a huge part of Sheffield United this season that we're doing this for more than just us. And I think that's been a really special connection, and it's been something that's made the season even more in terms of rebuilding that connection, in terms of being proud and honoured to be part of sort of this journey that we're on. And so I keep saying, like, my head is sat there and it is saying to me, you're the better team, you won more points, it's not 2004 again, it's not 2012 again, it's not 2019 again, this is 2025, Sheffield United can win the playoffs. And then my heart goes, and it goes, dun-dun, dun-dun. Have you remembered that you lose every time? And so then after that conversation of the curse, and you know, I talked to my dad, and my dad says, yeah, this is going to be my 10th trip to Wembley or Cardiff as an equivalent. We've lost them all. Okay. How many times have you seen us in the playoffs, Dad? Yeah, cheers. That's building my confidence, Dad. Tell me about your playoffs. Oh, this is my 10th playoffs watching United. I've never seen us get promoted and seen us relegated once.
Of losing horribly at Wembley.
It's just what we do. We just get to here and we lose horribly at Wembley. It's the story of our lives. So, yeah, 100 years, though. There's more numbers that tell me it could happen rather than it doesn't. Newcastle have won a cup at Wembley. Crystal Palace have won the FA Cup.
Yeah.
These are things that don't happen regularly, and maybe it's our time to have the moment that doesn't happen regularly. Our 10th trip to Wembley, our 10th playoffs, 100 years since we last won there. All of those numbers add up to tell me that Sheffield United are going to win. And so the nerves are killing me, if I'm being honest, and I'm trying my best to ignore them.
Yeah, it's funny because from a neutral point of view, I I don't really pay much. I don't really put stock into the history, but I
Curses.
think if you're a fan, you sort of associate. You're hugging the lamp.
I'm about to hug the lamp.
Take it, uncharge it, and find a port at Wembley. So
That's what
you
I'm going to have to
can.
do. This, for anybody who knows, this is my anxiety lamp. So when the nerves start piling up, I have to hug my lamp and I feel better. And so I've just started hugging my anxiety lamp. For those
Oh no.
listening rather than watching.
um, I don't tend to pay much attention to, but I think if you're a fan and you've experienced, we tend to put a lot of stock in our experiences, and we think that it's going to be the same when actually it isn't. It's completely different players. It's completely different.
And look, Sunderland did it, didn't they? They had a record as bad as ours. They failed in the playoffs time and time and time again. It was the red and white curse. No team in red and white could ever win the playoffs until they did. And Brentford did it. Then the year after Exeter did it. And then I think a week after Sunderland did it. We don't have the red and white curse anymore. Teams in red and white can win at Wembley. We just need to make sure that this weekend it's the right team in red and white that can win at Wembley. And there was too many W's in that sentence. And I think I said red and white.
Red and white, the red and white wizards. Oh, brilliant. Well, Ollie, all I can do, by the way, just before we finish off, were you a bit disappointed in the three of us? I mean, obviously, Johnny, you'd expect to predict.
Yeah,
Sunderland,
I was.
but you were a bit like me and Simon both said Sunderland when
So,
you'd be like, come on, Sheffield United are the best.
Genuinely, we got 92 points. We've been incredible all season. And I've spoken to you, and you said Sunderland are going to win. Spoke to Simon said Sunderland were going to win. Spoke to Ali Maxwell from Not the Top 20, he said Sunderland were going to win. Like, I'm sat here and I'm thinking, have I missed something? Have I lost my mind? Maybe that's it, though. Maybe we need to go in with that little bit of tempered expectation. Don't expect to win. Just go there to have a good day, to enjoy the moments, and hopefully that's what's going to carry us through. It's not about saying that we will 100% win, because nobody can say that. It's about going there, giving ourselves the best opportunity, and hopefully it being different this time. And maybe everybody else thinking that we're going to lose takes some of that pressure off.
Absolutely. Ollie, the very best of luck for Wembley. Give that lamp a
I'll
big
keep
hug.
it close.
Exactly, yeah. Can't wait for the final. I know you can. You can wait.
I both can and can't. I can't wait to not have this feeling in my tummy, but I also can't wait for us to not lose. I don't want to lose again.
Brilliant stuff. Well, Ollie, it's been such a pleasure to have you on this podcast as my co-host this season. You've been absolutely amazing.
Loved it.
Look forward to catching up with you again next season, whether Sheffield United are in the Championship or not.
Whether we're here or not, I'll be back to co-host with you, Gab, for as long as you want me. So, yes, a fantastic season. Massively enjoyed it. I think it's been a great season for the Championship with excitement at the top, the bottom, the playoffs. It's a mad league, but it's the best one in the world. So let's just keep covering it.
Absolutely. Well said.